So excited about. My name's Olivia Omega. I'm the founder track chair for Denver Startup Week and part of the Denver Startup Week organizing committee. Again, thank you for joining us for the first ever virtual Denver Startup Week. We've been able to have literally people from 32 different countries join us this past week, and we are closing out our event today, Friday, with an amazing panel. Thank you to our session organizers for being here. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender, identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of those identities. So there's something here for everyone at Denver Startup Week. I am going to go ahead and hand this over to our panelists and specifically to Kat to lead us through an important topic. Take it away. Thanks again, everyone.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Happy Friday. My name is Kat, pronouns she, they, and I'm the Chief Program Officer with Moonshot Adventures. And I am very excited that all of you chose to join me and our 4 amazing panelists and Moonshot Fellows on your Friday morning to close out your week. I'm going to start off and tell y'all a little bit about what Moonshot is, what we do, and then we're going to start into the panel where you'll actually get to hear from 4 amazing leaders of color who've launched their own ventures and organizations. So the point of what we are trying to do today is that we want y'all to really understand Moonshot's approach to developing our founders, including hearing from some of our fellows about the ways that the fellowship and the support from the fellowship influence their pathway in being able to launch. And then also, I'm excited for you to learn from fellows directly about their experiences launching as leaders of color in the Denver metro area. Before we get started, would love for some folks to throw into the chat or throw into to share with our panelists a little bit about who is here, who's in the room, and why you chose to come to this session. So we'll give just about 30 seconds for some folks to throw their names and why they chose to come into this session into the chat. And I'll take that 30 seconds to get myself another sip of my coffee. Welcome, Jade. I see some familiar names as well. Hi, Christine. Hi, Jaden. Awesome. All right. Well, keep throwing your name into the chat as we'd love to for folks to get to see a few more folks. Awesome, Maka. Excited to hear from founders of color. Awesome. All right. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for chatting it to the panelists, for those who are also doing panelists and attendees. So first I wanted to share, today it's just me from the Moonshot team, but we do have an amazing team of 5 people who run our programming and our operations to make Moonshot happen. So starting with Christine DeLeon, who you might know as CDL, who is our founder and CEO, who founded Moonshot in 2016. I serve as the Chief Program Officer. Sasha is our Program and Operations Associate, or some folks call her the Ops Team, but she is all an entire Ops team and one human. Alex Chavez, who just joined our team last week as the Finance and Operations Manager, and VJ Brown, who is in his first week this week as our new Program Manager. So, I'm going to start off with sharing about the problems that CDL, our founder, sought to solve when actually founding Moonshot in 2016. So the first problem is that we saw that there is a drastic difference in the experience our students of color are getting in their educational experiences in the Denver metro area. The graph that you see in the bottom, for all folks who are our data nerds out there, shows that when we see the actual percentage of DPS 3rd graders at or above grade level in reading and writing, we see a drastic difference in gap for our Latinx students and our Black students, in that we know that over time, if our city does more of the same, if we just keep going with the status quo, students of color in Denver will continue to fall further behind. The second problem was that although 75% of students in Denver are students of color, 75% of the teaching force is white. And you can see that in the graph on the right. That's out of almost 5,000 teachers. We see almost 75% of them are white. So that led us to two needs. First is that we have to change the learning environments for students of color. We need to change the outcomes that our kids are meeting. And then second, we need to diversify the talent that's going to transform those learning environments. And we see these two solutions as interconnected. So that brings us to Moonshot. Our vision is that we see a learner-centered system led by individuals who share and empathize with the experience of the students and communities they aim to serve, where all children become lifelong learners who persist through life and can meaningfully contribute to their communities. And so the way that we seek to change that is that we surface and support a diverse set of leaders, specifically local underrepresented leaders, to design and launch the schools and learning environments of tomorrow. And we have 4 of them who are here today to tell you more about that experience. And so here's our theory of change. We think if we invest in local underrepresented leaders and support them to actually develop their own school and program models that look dramatically different from what we see in the status quo, then we can transform outcomes for students of color that are currently being drastically underserved by our current system. And so this slide kind of shows you what our Moonshot Way is. So what does it actually mean to invest in local underrepresented leaders, and what does it mean to create new models? We see our fellows as actually creating new systems in order to disrupt the current system. And so our fellows get to build connections. We deeply believe in beg, borrow, and steal. So our fellows work hard at collaboration, building partnerships. We look for folks who are 2 to 3 years out from launch, and we start them in a part-time fellowship, which is the Moonshot Fellowship that goes for a year. We particularly provide them opportunities to pilot before opening, and we believe that providing a safe container where people can experiment, they can learn from mistakes and adapt their model that truly represents what students and families ask and need, then that is actually what's going to change the system of what we currently see. All right, and this is just a little bit more to give you a little bit more detail of what it looks like for Moonshot, particularly to develop leaders. So this is a graphic that shows you what our fellowship looks like. So we start off in 3 stages. We have the Explore stage, which is a first semester, and that is where we train typically a pipeline of 15 to 20 leaders to really explore their own leadership development and then also start honing their model design for their program or their school. The next stage is Cultivate for folks who are ready to move into piloting. And in this, they get a chance to pilot as well as build some of their strategic operational skills around budgeting, HR, legal, et cetera, so that they're more set up to launch their venture and then prepare for launch. The final stage is when folks pilot for an even longer amount of time at more rigorous testing. And after that, they become our Moonshot alumni, where they get different alumni services that support them moving forward on how to not only launch, but sustain their ventures. And this is what we believe the fellowship provides and needs for school and program founders. And so we show you this because we know that this is a group of folks who are interested in seeing not only in learning from founders of color, but also might be founders themselves. And so these are the things that we believe are very important strategic supports that founders need in order to succeed. All right, and here we have our fellow panel. So this is the good part, y'all. Now that I gave my spiel in the beginning to tell you a little bit about Moonshot and hope that y'all can get involved with partnering with us, with learning more with us in the future, now you actually get to hear from our 4 amazing panelists. So I'm very excited to introduce Alesha R. Scott, Tanya Sharez, Shalila Dillard, and Corey Montalvo, who are our 4 panelists that you'll get to learn and hear from around their experiences. And so I'm going to start off by asking our folks in the order on the screen to introduce yourself and share your name, your pronouns, your venture, and then we will dive into our questions. So I'll kick it to Alesha to start.
I'm forever going to be the first one. Alesha A. R. Scott A. Whatever.
Always.
Boo-hoo, poor me. Hey, y'all. I'm Alesha R. Scott, she, her, hers. I am the founder and CEO of Unleashed, strengths-based coaching and consulting for breakthrough results. We actually are a coaching and consulting firm that specializes in implementing strengths-based practices with individuals, teams, and organizations to get breakthrough results in life, school, and work.
Thanks, Alesha.
Hi, everyone. My turn. My name is Tanya Titus. I'm the founder and executive director of Convivir Colorado. We are a 6th through 12th grade program for immigrant youth and refugee youth and first generation youth, helping them sort of channel their leadership through the lens of their migrant journey. And my pronouns are she, her, her.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shalila Dillard, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm the founder and executive director of SED Enrichment Program. And the purpose of my program is to recruit and support students of color that are in middle school and high school and advanced coursework. So gifted and talented, AP classes, all those amazing courses. And we also have educational services as well that surround gifted and talented and equity.
What's good, everybody? Good morning. My name is Corey Montalvo. I am the founder and chief plug of the Youth Empowerment Broadcasting Organization, better known as YABO. He, him, his. Our program works with students and partners with students in grades 3 through post-secondary. We leverage the power of media to support them with developing into righteously authentic and self-determined people. Good to be here with y'all.
Thank y'all. All right, so let's get started. And just for our audience, if you have questions as you come up, feel free to put those into the Q&A or into the chat. I have some questions I'm gonna ask the panelists, but I will save some time for the end for y'all to get to ask them questions as well. Okay, we're gonna start off with a big juicy question, y'all. And I'll kick it to Corey first, and then we'll let anybody else take it from there. So, as an entrepreneur of color, you have chosen to be in spaces that are oftentimes dominated not just by whiteness, but by white males and by white middle-class male identities, who are often the people who have the confidence, the resources, and the access to do what they do because of the systems of oppression that currently exist. So what makes it particularly challenging, but also empowering to be an entrepreneur of color?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a gifted young man. And so we are not lacking anything. That's not on us. In those spaces that we feel uncomfortable, that's on those spaces, that's on white supremacy. And so for me, I've gotten to a place, and it's taken a lot of self-actualization, and it's taken things like Moonshot to create these spaces to feel comfortable in exploring your authentic self. But over the course of the last 3 or so years building YABO and existing in those spaces and having to navigate them, I've just rooted down and said, this is me. And it's very black and white. You either accept it or you don't. And so for me, at this point in my life and at this point as a professional, there's not much tension. I go into spaces, and if you're not going to uplift me for my full self, then I don't need to work with you. And that's a sacrifice of money and resources potentially, but that's my line. And I think Dr. Howard Fuller talks about this all the time. Define your line. And this whole work is a giant contradiction, particularly working in philanthropy. And so you have to define your line. And so for me, I got to the point where I just say, this is me. You love me or you don't. But I can't look at our youth that we work with and tell them to be their full self if I don't put that into the world myself.
Thank you, Corey. Let's see. I would love to hear, Tanya, I would love to hear your response to that question. And also, so Corey, appreciate hearing about how you show up and how you choose to show up and the sacrifices that might mean sometimes. Do you show up, Tanya, as the same the same version of yourself in every context? How and when do you decide when to adapt and when to hold true authentically?
All the hard questions. I think it's important to note that out of the 4 panelists, I'm the one that's sort of starting out now. And so as Corey was talking about, I'm still sort of trying to figure out that line for myself. And that means I'm also trying to figure out what it means to show up in all of these different spaces. But I do bring my whole self, because the main identity that I always carry with myself is being an immigrant. And I look like an immigrant because I'm brown, so I can't really put that away anywhere. And so I do take that with me, and I tell people when I talk to them, I'm undocumented, I'm unafraid, and let's talk. And sometimes people get taken aback by that because they're like, what do you mean you're undocumented and an entrepreneur and you're telling me about all of this? But it's important to bring that identity because that's the population I'm working with as well. I'm working with immigrant youth. I want them to feel that strength, and I need to model that for them too.
Thank you, Tanya. And Shalila and Alesha, I would love to hear from y'all, particularly as Tanya noted, Tanya's recently launched, and I know that y'all have a few more years under your belt as having launched. And so would love to hear, how did you figure out how to hold your authenticity true? How did you navigate or grapple with imposter syndrome when you were starting out versus now?
I would love to answer that. So I have been super intentional to surround myself in spaces that are people of color. And I did that because from 0 to 18, I was only around white students in my education. So I intentionally went to Hampton University to be around all Black people. I intentionally worked at schools that were surrounded with people of color. And so jumping into my venture, I was intentional about the schools that I worked at, and those being predominantly ran by people of color. So it was easier for me because I was super intentional about that, and was I valued myself because it could be really difficult to navigate in those spaces. But I will say that this year I am doing more equity work. So I'm an equity coach at one school that has 75% white educators, mostly males. So this is actually my very first year navigating that space, and I'm coming in to do equity work. So I'm the Black female coming in and do, and you know, I tell them bluntly, like, I know that because I'm a Black female, you have assumptions about me, but we're still going to get this work done because it's not about you, it's about these kids. So it's really interesting this year. And but I wouldn't have been able to do that and pivot like that if I didn't surround myself around my people.
That's so real, Shalita. Like, that resonates so much. This uncompromising commitment to authenticity is kind of how I think about what I do and why I do it. I'm like, if I'm going to go out on my own, like, go out fully on my own, because to live truly within my authenticity means that I live with the least amount of stress possible. I'm not going to be doing things the way that is dictated by my clients. I have very clear filters about who I choose to work with or not. And one of them is that I'm a consultant and not an employee. That's a nice way of saying it. The real way is like, I'm not your bitch. Okay, like, I do it my way in the way that's least stressful to me, that's aligned to my strengths. And, you know, this idea of imposter syndrome is really interesting, because one of the ways in which that are my talents that I'm naturally wired to do is I'm naturally wired to pick up something that I've never done before, never seen before, and I learn it really quickly. And I end up becoming a master at it. And I can usually teach people that. And it feels to people as if I'm winging it, but that literally is my strength. So sometimes I have to get out of my head when people are like, well, you don't have the 4 degrees and the, 30-year experience and certifications to go with it. And yet I'm still getting results with people. So I just have to honor that about myself.
Thank you, Alesha.
Can I add to that, because
Please.
she just brought up something that I feel like a lot of BIPOC entrepreneurs encounter is the part about like credentials, especially in the educational world. If you don't have a PhD in something, then you may not have credibility. Therefore, I don't have to pay you what you're asking for. And that's a whole nother story on how much we feel like we're worth, and how much we're asking, to do this work that no one else can do, because we have to do this work for our kids. You have to work on your system though. So, the system that is rooted in inequality, you need to do that work as white people, but we need to care for our own kids in these atmospheres. And so, yeah, the whole credentials part, I really, for a point, was like, I'm going to dial back on my programming because I need to get these credentials. But I had some really great talks with like Corey and other amazing people that was like, no, no, not necessary, because our value is way more than a credential could be.
Sorry, I got to add to that, because listen, no one can replicate your lived experience. Like, good luck. You'll never be able to afford to do that, The level of hypervigilance with which we had to do our work, the stress, the relentless anticipation of other people's needs, and produce excellence, like what that produces in you and that intuitive ability to like truly understand somebody else's need, you have to buy it. So now I just package that and be like, this is how much it costs for an hour of my time.
Yes to all of this. Let's keep going down this thread, because I think a lot about how folks are, they want to hear, well, what are the challenges of launching as a founder of color? What are the challenges you face? And I want to talk instead about what assets do you bring to the table because of your identities and your unique experiences?
I think I can start here. Speaking to that point of no one can replicate your lived experiences, I have had to really uplift the fact that I am a very unique person in the educational sphere in Colorado, because I work at the intersection of immigration and education, and who else can do that? And every time I walk into spaces, I'm constantly having to remind people, you don't have anyone who can tell you about what it's like to support undocumented students and mixed status students. I can do that, so here I am. Like, where are you going to put me? What are you going to do with my skills? Because let's do this. And the same with students, right? Like, the students, I love having someone to connect to with experiences that they've been through. And that's an incredible part, because then they're able to sort of share all of the experiences that they might not bring up otherwise. And so, for example, this summer, I had a summer program with different students across the country. And one of them, I didn't realize until maybe a few weeks into the program, had spent time in the Aurora Detention Center. And so she was just casually talking about this experience with our group. And I was like, oh my goodness, how did you feel so comfortable like talking about this traumatizing experience? And she said, well, we're in a group of people who are all immigrants or in mixed status communities. This is my space. These are my people. And that really, I think, shows like it matters who's in the room. It really does.
Yeah. For me, I'm a weird cat. I'm a geek. I love outer space. I like hiking and skydiving and all this stuff. And I think it's important that we uplift the diversity of ourselves, right? We are a spectrum of people. Just because you have Black or Latino doesn't mean I'm the same as every Black or Latino person. I'm a unique creature. And so when I come up in the spaces, I want youth and I want the people that we partner with to understand who this unique creature is. And it's okay to be your weird self. All right. What's your brand of crazy, and uplift that and show that to the world? Because you know what? Like, you're not going to box me in. You're not going to tell me that I'm not Black enough because I do this, or that's not the way that Latino folks do things. I'm Corey. And you know, whiteness gets to be diverse. Whiteness gets to be a spectrum. So that's my value that I bring to space. Hopefully, is that youth get to see, like, oh, this dude right here, although he may be a Black brother, he's not like everybody else, and it's okay to be the introvert. It's okay to be the one who listens to jazz instead of hip hop. It's all right. So hopefully that's what I bring into the fold in our learning spaces.
I love that, Corey. And I feel like now you've got everybody who's in the audience now thinking, what is my brand of crazy? And how can I make sure I bring that into the space? So we have a few questions that from some of our audience members. And one of them with both of those groups of people. And I'll lob it up and anyone can grab it.
You know, I actually want to contrast two experiences I had. So I was like chief talent officer at one point, and I didn't know HR, had no interest in knowing HR. I understood talent, but not HR. The technicality of it really kind of bores me, to be honest. And so it was like, there was a lot of pressure on me to like be the expert in everything. And I was like, should I get my SHRM certification? Right. And I did. I paid $700 for the materials to study, paid $300 for the certification, postponed it, paid another $100 to postpone it. I mean, a good cool $1,000. I still don't have my SHRM certification because I really was never interested in it. Right. If I'm really being authentic and honoring myself, yes, credential wise, that looks cute to say I got my SHRM certification, I'm in talent. What I did end up doing, though, was I was deeply interested in strength. So what actually fulfills me is the question I've been asking my whole life. Who am I? And that's the road that I've gone down. And I'm like, I want to get expertise in that. So there happened to be certification, but I would just shift the question for me. I shifted the question to what deeply fulfills me and how do I get deeper into that? If there's a certification, great. If there isn't, I'm going to just dive into that. And that becomes my brand. And if people want it, then they're going to be interested in me. And if they don't, no sweat off my back, because I want to do crap I don't want to do anyway.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Shalia. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think this is important, particularly when you're on the come up. Is social capital is key for us. So things like Moonshot and these fellowships are massively important because that's our main marketing strategy, right? Those are the people who are going to connect us to the resources. And it's important because, look, I'll be real. My average is I'm just going to be real. My average is the white man's excellence, right? And unfortunately, what happens is because those people have those PhDs and all these things that certify them in the status quo, I got to go tenfold, but I'm not going to labor for that. So I need folks to go to bat for me, to get me in the door, to make that process easier, because I'm not going to waste my energy convincing you of my humanity and brilliance. So that's what's important for us. Is we need vanguards. We need people to go out there, promote us, and not only promote us, but to sponsor us. There's a difference between promotion and sponsoring. All right. And so those are the folks we need in our circle. And that's what's gotten me to this place, is that social capital.
And I knew there was a reason why I wanted you to go first. It's because it just teed me up for what I was about to say, Corey. Yeah, that social capital part was huge. I am a gifted person, just like Corey and Alesha and Tanya and Kat. We are and I know that, and I knew that because I was, identified as gifted, but I know that because of the just like knowing myself. And one of the things about me, so if you are an introvert, then it could be a little difficult, like navigating social capital, because I'm typically like really reserved, but because I'm so passionate in what I do, I knew it was necessary. And so, yes, connecting with other Black entrepreneurs, business people. I joined several other different programs, Urban Leadership Foundation of Colorado, Sister Biz Consulting, Sister Biz Consulting, and Moonshot. And like I said, I did that because I knew that I was going to have to like break out of my shell of being an introvert in order to like make this happen and get those connections that I needed. But I will be completely honest with you. I'm in school right now to get my master's in educational psychology and a GT endorsement. And that is because the very niche structure that I'm operating in and gifted and talented, I see none of me. I see none of me. And the ones that I do, they have their doctorate and they've been in the game for like 30, 40 years. And so I realize like the bigger picture of what you want to do. If it's not in the bigger picture of what you want to do, it's not worth it. For me, I see the amazing stuff that I'm going to create, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to get this credential. But again, you have to truly know who you are and surround yourself with people who force you to know who you are. And then all of that will come to light. But at the end of the day, your credentials is really embedded in a system of white supremacy. So, yeah, there's that.
The only thing I'll add is that at the stage of my venture, my credentials actually come from the community. So the more that I can spend time with people who are immigrants and who are local and who are have experiences different than mine or same to mine, or, the more that I can do that with directly impacted people, the more I know that they're going to start seeing impact and they're going to start feeling the confidence and they're going to make a difference. And if I can uplift that, then I can, take that to the white man and be like, listen, white man, there's 50,000 people who are telling you that clearly I can do this work. And that is the best credential that any of us can have.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. And I appreciate getting to hear, in closing with this idea of how do we focus our credibility on the people we're actually trying to serve and work with. So thank you. I would love to hear, we're great. Thank you for those who are sending in more questions too. We will definitely get to those in a moment. What advice do y'all have for people who are hopeful founders of color? And what advice do you wish that you had, or what advice would you give an earlier you in your stage of founding?
Okay, I gotta go. I know I just talked, but I was talking to another professional who does similar work around the nation, and I had a conversation with him, just like, kind of telling him about my program and everything. And he was like, he stopped me and he was like, Shalila, you are coming from a place where you are having, like, you feel like you're having to tell me all these things to prove what an amazing person you are. And I need you to immediately stop that. And that it has stuck with me this entire time. And then the other piece that he said is that Black women usually underbid themselves on like money 3 times less than the average person. So whatever number that you have in your head, I need you to triple that, because in this society, we just don't know our worth because we don't see it. And I wish I would have known that at the very beginning, because I wouldn't have had to make so many sacrifices and sacrifices for my family and my kids and my husband, to be at the place that I am right now, where I'm actually able to like pay myself for the work that I do.
That's so real. Adding on to that, another advice about the pay thing, Dan Sullivan talks about find a number that scares you, then add 20% to it. You know? And I keep that top of mind now, you know, and I'm like, that's what I'm worth. And they're like, well, I can't afford. Okay, well, now you know the number. So go raise funds and give me a buzz back when you're ready.
Yeah, I think I would have engaged or interrogated my relationship to money a lot earlier. That, you know, we live in a scarcity mindset because that's the way this society wants us to perceive money and resources. But the money's there, right? And it's a tool. And so that's the way I look at it. And I think, Alessia, your point, like find the number that scares you, yo. You know, build budgets that are ridiculous, because if you get that, you are going to do amazing work. And don't like, and let's not get it twisted. You got a lot of white men running charter school networks in our community that have plantation systems essentially that are getting millions of dollars. So I'm not going to sit here and feel bad taking your million, because I'm actually going to help create a liberatory process for our communities. So that's what I would have did earlier on, is just gotten righteous with, nah, that's our resource anyway. That was built on our backs first and foremost.
I love that all of us are mentioning money. I've been doing this work of sharing my expertise with schools for like a decade now, and I didn't start charging for any of it until the past like year, which is insane, right? But I would also add this concept of, I keep thinking about that one quote or meme or whatever it is on social media that says like, a mediocre white man just has the confidence to go after what you're doing, and you were waiting for perfection. And so for the past few weeks, I've been talking to high school students about characteristics of white supremacy culture. And literally the first characteristic is perfectionism. And that's what I've been trying to do my whole adult life. And if I could have just gone back and told myself, listen, you have such unique skills, you can just do it, just launch, just go, start talking to people and go from there, just like fly off the cliff and somehow you'll keep going.
Yes, snaps. There's lots of love in the chat too from our audience, and what y'all are all making me think of, going back to Corey's shout out for Dr. Howard Fuller, and his first comment was how Dr. Howard Fuller positions funding as well of that is my money to take, and I'm going to ask for it, and I'm going to go for it. And to not be ashamed or guilt or scared to do that, but to really see it as yours. And so I would love now, as we're talking already about money, to keep going with this and talking about the funding landscape and what it looks like as a founder of color. I feel like there's a million, I'm like, all of y'all are ready. Like everyone's like, okay, I'm good. Let me just go off on just that alone. So would love to hear, what do you see as the unique challenges you face as a founder of color with the funding landscape, and how could funders, whether that is organizations or individual contributors, support you and other founders of color?
Yeah, philanthropy. It is the most racist system process that's known. I mean, I just can't stand it. We have great funding partners. I'm not like, we have great partners and I love them, but there's so much work that needs to be done. And we deal with program officers, we deal with dope executive directors of foundations, but the people who create the processes, who create the gateways and all of the racism that is in philanthropy are the boards. And so we need people to focus on their boards, and you need to shift your board mindset. And if you do that, things will start opening up and be easier for us. But until then, we're going to have the same conversation in 5 years, 10 years. And so I'll just name names. Margoff Foundation right now is working on their board, right? They are facing the equity conversation and all of this towards their board. And so we need more of those conversations to happen between us, the grantees, the people who actually do the work, and the boards who run these organizations, because those are the ones who don't do the work at all. And so that's my philosophy on it. And until then, we're not going to change at all.
Yes. I actually was a part of a group during the pandemic, and it was about 7 of us, nonprofits that have been in this sector for a while, some educational, some not. And we were actually having this conversation, and we are like, enough is enough. We know the work that we're doing. You see the work that we're doing in the community. And we still have to jump through 8,000 hoops just to get $5,000 or $10,000. Like what? What? um, and like I said, I have, and my story is probably not unique, but I really like had to have some crazy jobs just to survive, just to put food on my table, because of this system in philanthropy that says, oh well, I don't have a connection to the connection that knows her, and so I'm not gonna give her the amount of money. I just got funded from an amazing foundation, and I asked for 18, and they actually gave me more than that. And it was a conversational thing. It was rooted in indigenous community, and I didn't have to do all this extra. And they showed up for me, and that's how it's actually supposed to be. Because when I get that money, just wait on how much we can do. Black people, we are resourceful. We could talk about using our genius as a whole people. We can make 2 meals out of $20, right? So just imagine what I'm gonna do with the, the money that I receive from that. And I think founders and people in philanthropy need to understand that and stop being so stingy.
We got some follow-up questions here that are coming in, and folks asked, what did you have to prove before you were able to obtain funds? And was that, okay, I'm already saying, I was gonna say, was that a barrier? It was a little bit of a leading question. But yeah, what did you have to prove, and how, and then I think the flip side of that I'd love to hear is, I think this is Jaden who asked a little while ago, what does your ideal funding partner look like? And I know a few of you have started to give some examples of that.
Yeah, right quick. This is how ridiculous it is. I was doing 4 fellowships at one time while working in a foundation, right? And it was still a struggle to get funds. So it's never enough. And so I think, who says it? Anyway, there's a quote by an author, and it says racism is just a form of distraction, right? Distract you. They say you ain't got enough of this, so you go prove that. And that's what this whole thing is. So my ideal funder is someone who looks at me and says, we trust you, and we respect you, and we respect you in your full self. I'm not coming in suits and ties. I'm just letting you know that. Tennis shoes, baseball cap. And if that makes you uncomfortable and that's not professional for you, then let it go. So, and also Dr. Howard Fuller again says, I will change what I say. I will not change what I do. And so understanding that you're not going to define outcomes for us because we know how to do it and do it right.
Yes, if y'all can't tell, Moonshot in our family is a big fan of Dr. Howard Fuller. So I was like, we should put some links in the chat too, so y'all can also get to check out his work and hear him speak.
Sorry, I haven't had much to say because I'm a for-profit. So the whole funding environment, anytime I think about grants or having to write something to get money, I break out into hives, and I'm like, I just have to figure out how to like fully bet on myself, right? Which is scary. I have to admit, it's a little terrifying.
Well, I'd actually love to build off that, Alesha. Can you tell us a little bit about what does it look like for you in how you negotiate your fees? And I know this applies as well to other folks too, but how do you navigate that? So you're not necessarily your funders, but your clients.
You know, I have to say, like, a year and change in now, it's still kind of a game. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to honor this idea of like, okay, find a number that scares me, and then add to that. And that is kind of what weirdly worked out. What I've done in the instance where they appear to be pushing back, right? And let's make it real clear. I have heard multiple times, hell, I've even said it when, you know, consultants and people of color would submit their bids for stuff, right? When I was in position, power, and organizations, it was significantly lower than what we would have normally paid somebody. And usually we kind of snicker, we're like, oh my God, it's so cheap, they're so cheap, you know. But nobody ever goes, you know, actually, here's the real. And I did that once when I hired someone, and I paid him 30 grand more because that was the level at what I was hiring at, even though he was making 40, I was paying 70, you know. Totally lost my train of thought. What was your question? Oh, the money.
You're
So how
doing
do I
it.
set it? So whenever someone kind of sets some level of boundary or there's some budget I need to be respectful of, I'll actually scale back the services. I won't scale back my rates. Does that make sense? You know, and then, or I'll stretch it out and be like, okay, well, we can, for these 2 months, here's what we can do. And then we could take the break you need to gather whatever funds you need, restart the fiscal year. Yeah, so that's how I think about it.
Thank you, Alesha. I feel like that the inequities, the lack of transparency, it's obviously very different for profit, but the trend, the through lines all still holds as the system that makes it really difficult when you're an entrepreneur, particularly an entrepreneur of color, trying to navigate your living and figure out how to do it in a sustainable way. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Let's see. I think we have time for maybe 1-2 more questions. And so I would love to end I think the final question. We'll see how long it goes. And this folks have been asking this in chat. How can people support you in your venture? And would love to hear from everyone, as I think the audience wants to hear how they can support y'all.
I can start. I am just starting out, so I need everything, basically, just to be real. But I think all of us can agree that money is really, really helpful, and money with sort of no strings attached, no contingencies. Like, I'm giving you money for this section. No, just give me money. I'm going to use it the best way I know how for students. And then, of course, it was mentioned a lot earlier, but that idea of social capital, like, everyone knows so many people, and maybe it's just me, but I just feel like half the time I'm still trying to figure out who's who, where, and how. And it would be amazing to just have people be like, hey, here's Tanya, this is an amazing person. Meet this other funder who is working on X, Y, and Z. Just introduce me to people, tell people how great I am because I am great. And from there, tell everyone to give me money. And that would be amazing for our students.
I'd have to echo that. Tanya is very great. She's one of my favorite people. And yes, give her money. I would say that the support that I would need is I'm always looking for business professionals of color to come in and speak to my students. They need to see they need to see themselves in success. They need to do that. And that's one of the parts of my program. I need college students of color. I just got funding, so I really need them like right now, like yesterday. And I am looking for a program coordinator. There's a lot. And more funding because we're doing really well this year. I'm impressed. I don't know if COVID did it or the social racial unrest. I don't know what, but I'm super grateful. And really, I always tell people, like, this work is social justice work. This is social justice work that I'm doing. Me having to step into this school where I am the only professional female in that entire school, that is social justice work. And I'm doing it for these kids, not for them. And so the funding would be great. Also, like she said, connections. A lot of the opportunities that I've just gotten over these, this is our third year, is because of the connections. So I'm really grateful for those as well. But if you see yourself in really impacting students on a personal level, I really would love for you to come in and talk to our kids.
Yeah, I mean, status quo is money, but if you're broke, don't break out the checkbook. There's many there's many ways to support. Promote students' work, show up when we ask for support. All those ways. There's a million ways to support. But beyond our organization, I think there's a couple of things that you all can do. One, work on yourselves. Work on yourselves. Get on the path of decolonization. Everyone is colonized in this country, and white folks have the most decolonization to do. So work on yourself. Two, our two young adults that work in our organization, Jaden Wynn, who's on this call, and Isaiota Barra Ramirez, they're leading a lot of our programming this year, but they are two fantastic young people, and they're exploring what their post-secondary world is going to look like. All right. So if you have opportunities, if you have internships, things like that, particularly in media, particularly work opportunities that are going to humanize them and not treat them as labor, reach out to us, because we're looking to support our young people in their post-secondary pathways. And then the third thing is our partners are wonderful. So I'm going to shout out Empower Community High School. Wisdom Amuzu, who is Moonshot Cohort 1, runs that high school. To run a high school in this day and age with COVID, racial rebellion, and to be a Black man doing that in that community, you need to show him love and support. So show up for him in that school. And then also Paul Clifton, who runs the Confluence Center over in McGlone Academy, who's doing his thing, and just wonderful educator, but dope community activist. So reach out to those people and wrap and cocoon around them, because it's a community. We can't do this work alone.
Man, I echo all of that, especially when everyone was speaking about connections. Know who is in the space and who is doing what and who is great at what. So that when you just are in the middle of a conversation, you know that top of mind. You know what? Hold on. Let me check with them. You know somebody who can tell you who. You can pick up the phone and call CAT and call CDL. They can tell you who in the space does X, Y, and Z to make sure that, that energy and that support that we can provide others and growing our business as well can start here. One of the clients I got, like a marketing firm in Denver. Okay, here's how this happened. A marketing firm in Denver. She was like, yeah, some wife of one of our employees recommended you. I'm like, I don't know. I still don't know who he's talking about. Finally, somebody, matter of fact, I think it was Nathan Schmidt. Nathan, right. Sent my name to Rose Foundation. I got on some nebulous list. Then they reached out, person's wife reached out to the person they knew at Rose who gave them this list. And I was in there and they went, and here I am. But because I'm on that list, because I was vouched 2 lines down, full confidence. They came at me with full confidence. It was my deal to lose. I didn't have to make up any ground. I started at 0, maybe even a little bit higher. And usually we're starting below, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. I feel like across the 4 of y'all, you really spoke to how to disrupt power and how it currently lives in this ecosystem, and power in the form of money, time, and connections. And how all of those things are necessary in order to not just raise up individual entrepreneurs of color, but as Corey did in actually sharing some of our other cohort members. And what we believe deeply at Moonshot is that we are raising up a whole network that is symbiotically working in order to change the entire system, not just in an individualistic, oh, this one person is going to succeed on their own. But the cohorts are successful when all of the cohorts are raising up one another, and we expand our connections and our partnerships beyond just even our 4 cohorts into the broader network of leaders of color, of leaders who are underrepresented in this ecosystem. Thank y'all so much. And for folks in the audience, we've also been putting in the chat the links to each of the fellows ventures who are on this call, as well as Wisdom and Paul, who Corey mentioned as well. And we'll try and see if there's a way that we can share this out after this with folks who attended and RSVP'd. Well, we are at 10:58, so we are really right at time. Something that Moonshot loves to do in some of our traditions is closing it out with having our 4 A's. So we love to have 4 A's, which we stand for appreciations, an aha, an apology, or an ask. And so would love for each of our panelists to do a quick one of the 4 A's, and then also would love for our audience to put that into the chat. What is one of your 4 A's? And I'll put in what it means again: an appreciation, an aha, an ask, or an apology. And make sure when you chat to go on click so it's to all panelists and attendees, just so the other attendees can see your answer as well. And so I will have any one of our panelists start.
I can begin. I just want to say an appreciation for Moonshot. Every single space that we're in is always great. And especially for Corey, Shalila, and Alesha, every time you speak, I'm just so inspired and ready to take on the world. And that's how we all should feel all the time. Thank you.
I have to say, I have been digging the alumni support for Moonshot. I need you, listen, get into Moonshot just so you can be an alum at some point. Is all I'm saying. Because, you know, I'm not eligible for no funding, right? Because I'm for profit, right? But I get access to an executive coach, and he is badass. I get access to really incredible, strategic thinkers, to an attorney that is giving me feedback on my contract. All this is gold, to be invited to speak on panels, because, y'all know my phrases: when I open my mouth, millions fall out. So any opportunity to speak, right, gets me into the spirit of that thing, So I'm just saying, Moonshot alumni.
Yeah, I'm appreciative of the space as always. We need more of this. I need more of this. I'm also appreciative of the young people that I get to partner with. So thank you, Jaden, for being on this call, and repping Yabo, and repping yourself, and repping the youth.
I always love any opportunity to where I can be as authentic as possible, and I just appreciate Moonshot and UCAT and the other panelists. Anytime I hear Corey just speak, it's just so amazing, because he brings his whole self, and that allows me to bring my whole self. So I really appreciate everyone. And of course, thank you everyone in the audience.
Thank y'all. Thank you to Denver Startup Weekend. Thanks for everybody for coming. Thank you, Olivia, for opening up our session. And we hope that y'all have a great final last day of Denver Startup Week before you head off into your weekend.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.